He had seen war. He had heard the sounds of rockets ripping through the night sky, had felt the tremors of explosions shake the ground beneath his boots. He had carried brothers in arms off the battlefield, blood soaking into the sand, and he had buried their memories deep inside his heart so he could keep moving. He was a black soldier, a man who had given years of his life to serve a country that didn't always serve him back. Yet through it all, one thought kept him steady: home. The little house in his neighborhood, the laughter of his children, the warmth of his wife's embrace, the prayers of his mother whispered each night for his safety. That was his anchor, his reason to survive the chaos. When the day finally came, he stepped off the transport plane with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, the sun glaring down on the tarmac. There was no parade waiting, no cameras flashing. Soldiers like him didn't come back to banners and brass bands. They came back quietly, slipping into the world they'd been torn away from. He caught a ride in a cab, each mile pulling him closer to the life he had been dreaming about for years. He pictured his kids running into his arms, his wife's tears of joy, his mother cooking his favorite meal. The thought made his eyes sting with something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. But as the cab slowed onto his street, his chest tightened. Something was wrong. The house he knew, the one he had left behind, looked like a skeleton of itself. The windows were boarded up, the door chained with a heavy lock. Furniture, broken and battered, lay scattered across the yard. And then he saw them, his family. His wife, his children, his aging mother, sitting on the curb surrounded by bags and boxes, their entire lives reduced to scraps on the sidewalk. His heart dropped. He stumbled out of the cab, the duffel slipping from his grip. His daughter ran first, throwing herself into his arms, her little body shaking with sobs. His wife's face was streaked with dried tears, her voice cracking as she whispered, "They took everything." His mother tried to stand, her hands trembling, her voice breaking. "Son, they threw us out. While you were gone, they threw us out." The soldier held them, his chest tight with rage and disbelief. He had faced enemies with guns, men who wanted him dead, but he had never felt this powerless. "Who did this?" he asked. His wife's eyes hardened. "The landlord, that millionaire who owns half the block. He said he wanted this property for his new development. We fought it, but the court papers came too fast, too complicated. And when we couldn't pay a lawyer to fight back, they came with trucks. They locked the doors. They left us here like trash." The soldier's jaw clenched so hard it hurt. A man who had risked his life for his country, who had missed birthdays, anniversaries, funerals, was coming home not to honor, but to find his family thrown to the streets like they didn't matter. He rose to his feet, his uniform still dusty from the journey, and made a vow in that moment: this battle would be fought. Not with bullets, but with truth. Not for a nation, but for his family. The next morning he walked into the glass tower downtown that bore the millionaire's name. The building gleamed with arrogance, each polished surface screaming of wealth and power. The receptionist stammered as he approached, his presence impossible to ignore. His shoulders were squared, his eyes burning with something more powerful than anger. She tried to stop him, but he pushed past until he was standing face to face with the man himself. The millionaire was dressed in a custom suit, a gold watch on his wrist, his smile smug and hollow. "Ah," he said, "the soldier. I heard you were back. I suppose you've already seen your situation." His voice carried the casual cruelty of a man who believed money excused everything. "That was my home," the soldier said, his voice low, steady. "My family. You had no right." The millionaire chuckled, leaning back in his leather chair. "I had every right. The papers were signed. Deadlines passed. You weren't here to protect them, and I don't wait for anyone. Business is business. Maybe if you'd stayed instead of playing war hero, you'd still have a roof over your head." The words cut deep. They were meant to, but the soldier didn't lash out, didn't give him the satisfaction. He leaned forward, his eyes locked on the man who had shattered his family's life. "I fought for this country, for the freedoms you take for granted every day. And I'll fight again, not with violence, with justice. You may own buildings, but you don't own us." And so the fight shifted to court. The millionaire came armed with an army of lawyers in expensive suits, stacks of documents, loopholes twisted into weapons. The soldier had nothing but a government-issued uniform, a public defender, and the truth. At first, it seemed impossible. The legal system had always favored the wealthy. The word spread first among neighbors, then among veterans groups, then across the city. Reporters picked up the story. Black War hero returns home, finds family evicted by millionaire. Soon, the courtroom was packed. Rows of veterans sat silently in support, civilians watched with outrage, and cameras lined the back walls. The millionaire sat smugly through it all, confident money always won. But the soldier was steady, unshaken. When he took the stand, he didn't speak with theatrics. He spoke with the same calm discipline that had carried him through firefights and ambushes. He described the eviction, the false notices, the cruel timing. He told them how his wife begged for help, how his children cried in the cold, how his mother had nowhere to go. His voice never cracked, but every word carried the weight of sacrifice and injustice. At one point, the millionaire's lawyer sneered, "You're a soldier, not a businessman. You don't understand property law, contracts, development. Maybe this is just beyond you." The soldier looked straight at him and replied, "Maybe I don't know business, but I know honor, I know sacrifice, and I know no amount of money gives a man the right to destroy lives and call it progress." The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge paused. For weeks, the trial dragged on, every detail pulled apart. The millionaire's arrogance began to crack. His lawyers tried to paint the soldier as irresponsible, as someone who abandoned his family for war. But each attempt backfired, because the people watching knew the truth. They knew sacrifice when they saw it. Finally, the verdict came. The judge's voice was clear, unshakable. The eviction had been unlawful. The millionaire's actions, though hidden behind paperwork, had crossed into abuse of power. The family was to be restored to their home. Damages were to be paid. And the ruling would stand as a permanent record against the millionaire's empire. The soldier sat still, his wife clutching his hand, his children pressed close. He didn't cheer. He didn't smile. He simply breathed for the first time since he had stepped onto his street and seen his family on the curb. Outside, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust forward. He said only one thing, "I didn't fight for medals. I fought for my family, and no one, not even a millionaire, gets to take that away." That night, the soldier stood again at the doorway of his home. The lock was gone, the lights were on, the rooms alive once more with laughter. His children ran through the halls, his wife wept softly into his chest, his mother whispered prayers of thanks. He set his duffel down, finally, and exhaled the war he had been carrying inside him. He had fought battles abroad, but this one, this fight for his family, for dignity, for justice, was the battle that defined him. Because true strength isn't measured by medals or money. It's measured by the courage to stand tall when everything has been stripped away. It's measured by the will to protect those you love, no matter the cost. And sometimes, the greatest victories aren't won overseas, they're won right here at home.